Hey everybody, the Polaris FST. So I went out for the first trip of the year. Headed up to New Hampshire and up in Pittsburgh, and took the sled off the trailer and immediately started having problems with it. And so basically, what's going on? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to document the issues that I'm having with it. So I know that the issue that's wrong with this sled right now is pretty common with the Polaris FSTs. But just to describe the conditions, what will happen is the sled will start up and idle fine, and it'll sit there and idle all day. But what will happen is you'll go out for a little bit of a ride, and within 10 minutes, the sled will start coughing and sputtering and backfiring, and then it'll get to the point where the power will just get reduced to the point where it won't even move. It won't even move past idle. And then what will happen is if you shut it down and let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, you can start it right up and basically continue on for another 5 or 10 minutes. So this is what happened with me on the first trip on a Friday night. Basically, we went out and it got progressively worse and worse and worse. And basically, I had to take 5-minute intervals where I could ride it and then stop it, let it cool for 10 minutes, and then ride, so on and so forth. But essentially what's going on is the root cause is that I have a restriction in the fuel system to the engine. So what happened? Essentially what's happening is that the computer is essentially recognizing that there's not enough fuel pressure in the rail, and so whenever it goes to build boost, the ECU just says nope, I don't have enough gas, so I'm not going to let you build boost, and essentially goes into a quasi-limp mode. So, and the reason for this is within this tank for the FSTs, whether it be in 06 all the way up to 2013 and 2014, there's an internal pump within the tank, and on the bottom of that pump there's a line that falls off to the bottom of the pump, and what will happen is the pump will suck up any type of sediment or junk in the tank, and basically the fuel system will get restricted. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the seat off, remove the tank, remove the console, and I'll show you what's wrong with the pump, and I'll show you guys how to fix it and go from there. So just follow along, and what I'll do is I'll take videos of basically the disassembly process and going from there. So stay tuned. Thanks. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to empty the gas out of the tank, because where the pump that's in the tank, it sits roughly in the middle of the tank, towards the high end, but still you want to get as much gas out of the tank as you can. So I'm leaving the sled on the trailer just so it's elevated. It's a little bit easier to work on. And what I have is basically the trailer's all the way on the ground, so all the gas is going to be towards the front of the tank. And what we got here is a 5-gallon can, and what I bought is one of these shaker siphons, and all it is, it's a one-way check valve. And essentially what you do is you stick it all the way down the tank and you just start shaking it. And what's going to happen is it's going to start building fuel in the line, and it's going to get to the point where it will start flowing like that. So now if you listen to it, if you can hear it, basically that noise you hear is the check valve in the tank, and so now it's flowing into the can. And honestly, this is the easiest way to siphon the gas out of the sled. There's no mess. Your hands don't smell like gas. There's no chance of you sucking any fuel through your mouth or anything like that. So basically, I'm gonna let this draw out for about 5 minutes or whatever it takes to fill the tank, or whatever it takes to drain it, and go from there. So stay tuned. Be the next step. We'll be taking off the console and then showing you where the fuel filter is. Alright, so I pulled about 5 little over 5 gallons out of the tank before I had to change it. And now it's at the point where the fuel level is low enough in the tank where I can safely take the fuel pump out of the tank without having to worry about any type of mess. So the next thing in the process as far as getting the tank out is, you basically have to remove this console, and it's actually very easy to do. The first thing you have to do is there's a nut on the fuel filler neck right here, this big plastic nut. You got to take that off, and then to take the rest of the console off, what it is, there's 2 nuts up here, 2 Torx bits. There's where's the other one? There's a couple hiding behind the side panels right here. There's one right here. And then walk around to the other side of the sled. We got to take the other side panel off. And the other one is right here. So basically you take those 4 fasteners off and the console comes right off. And it's pretty straightforward. Another thing you have to do is on the back side of the console is your electrical for your key switch. You got to take that off, and I'll go grab a flashlight and show you where that is. So walk with me. So up the right there. Let me get focus here, guys. What are we looking at? So basically, right there in the corner, that's the ignition for the wiring for the ignition for the key switch. All you do is you just pull that right off, and once you do that, that console comes right off. So I'm filming this with my iPhone, so it's kind of hard to film and work at the same time. So I'll just do in steps. So just stay tuned for the next part. Thanks. Okay, so now the console is removed. Pretty straightforward, like I said. And once it's removed, it gives you access to probably one of the more important things that you have to look at when you're in this scenario is this guy right here. This is the fuel filter coming out of, basically that's from the tank to the pump to the filter to the rails. So basically this is a serviceable part from Polaris. It has these quick connectors on it that are automotive. Basically you just push these clips back, pull the hoses off on both sides, and then remove this. Looks like it's a 10mm bolt, and it comes right off. Polaris, I think, recommends replacing the fuel filter every 3,500 miles. I know for a fact, more likely this is probably clogged because it probably sucked up some stuff from the pump and the filter stopped it. That's what part of the reason why I have a fuel blockage, and which is leading to the greater issue that it won't build boost. So the next part is removal of the seat. And underneath the seat, there's just two 10mm bolts that come right off, and basically then the whole seat slides back. So the next step will be removing the seat. Thanks. Okay, so we're at the point where we're going to remove the seat. So like I said, I'm at the back of the tunnel here, just to give you your bearings. So I was wrong. They're not 10mm. They're actually 3/8. So what I'm going to do is just use my impact gun to get this off. A tight fit, but it gets the job done. Same thing on the other side. Alright, so both of those bolts come out. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Now, grab our bolt. Put that there. And now the seat will just slide back just like that. And so the only thing you have to do at this point, draw the seat back, and then you roll it. You'll see that there is your your connection for your brake light. So just disconnect that, and then the seat will come off. Pretty simple. All right, so here's the fuel tank without the seat on it. You can see that the seat is actually very long. Not the seat, but the tank is actually very long. So the only thing you have to do to remove the tank is remove this bolt. And actually, there's only one on this one, because when we took it apart up in New Hampshire last weekend, the retainer clip for this bolt actually let go. So the bolt fell through, and to get that bolt, it's very difficult because it's right underneath the track. Well, it's actually right above the track. So we were kind of limited with tools and everything else and patience. So once we figured out what was going on, we just kind of put it back together real quick. But essentially, you just remove that one bolt, and then the tank slides out. Let's see if this is 3/8 as well. Nope, it's not. So I have to get another socket for it. Okay, so before we can take the seat off, what it is, there's two fuel lines, and it's kind of hard to get a good picture of them, but basically they're those guys right there. And if you look, you'll see two white rings, all right? And the way these separate is, if you look at the fuel filter, I kind of already took it off. I'll put it back on. Basically, this is a quick connect system, and here is that white ring, that retention ring, that's on the same thing the fuel lines. Basically, you just snap it on, and that's on there, it doesn't leak. So the way you take these off is, you basically just depress it, pull the clip back, and it pulls right off. It's simple as that. This is a little bit tricky because, you know, there's not much room to get your hands in there, but it can be done. You just got to be patient with it. So that's how you get the fuel lines off. And once you do that, the tank will go slide out that way, and then you'll see everything that's attached to it. So stay tuned. All right, so here we are. In case you're ever looking, wondering what your FST looks like without the tank and the seat and everything else. So there's the charge pipe right there. There's the boost box, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. It's made out of plastic, and then all your wiring and everything else. And here are those two plastic lines. Actually, one of them. Here's the other one that I took off. So, you know, pretty straightforward. Not that big of a deal to take it off. So now the tank has been removed. It's on the bench. And now that's the here's the fuel pump. You know, you had a single wire connecting to the rest of the harness for the electrics of it. But if you look at the pump, you see where it is in the tank. This is why we drained it, because even though it does sit relatively high, it's still a good idea to drain it. Otherwise, you just have a big mess and a possible fire hazard. So, you know, we'll be pulling the pump out. And I'll show you what's the root issue. Okay, so I think what I forgot to really do when I first started talking about the beginning of this project, to really give a clarification on exactly what happened as far as in the symptoms. So basically, you know, we headed up, unloaded, and went for a night ride. And within probably 10 minutes of being out on the trail, what happened is the sled basically started coughing, hiccuping, bogging, not building boost or anything like that. And so what initially I thought it was I thought it was just bad gas. And so we were actually going up to a gas station anyway. It was about a half a tank in it. So I said, it's probably just bad gas. I'm probably just sucking up a little bit of water. So went to the gas station, filled up, and started it up. It ran fine. Got out of the gas station, got on it, and it was fine. And then within 5 minutes, the symptoms started to come back. And at that point, the check engine light came on, and it was solid. It wasn't blinking. In case you're ever wondering, a blinking checking engine light on an FST basically means you have a boost leak. If it's solid, you have a failure somewhere in the system. So at that point, I thought it was a speed sensor, so I unplugged the speed sensor, and same thing. I started up, ran fine for another 10 minutes. It's up. The speed sensor is bad because I thought it was that because at the beginning of the fall, I replaced the bearing on the drive shaft because that went, and I replaced the speed sensor. So I thought it was being the speed sensor. I unplugged it, same thing. It ran great for about 10 minutes, and then it just started, same thing, blah blah blah. So this happened over the course of probably about 45 minutes, and at that point we decided, you know what, we're just gonna not risk it. We're just gonna head back to camp, and basically we rode it 5 minutes at a time, and the conditions are the same. It would run good for 5 minutes, and basically start to cough, backfire, and then it would just cut out where it would idle fine, but it just wouldn't move. But then if you again let it sit for 5 minutes, you could ride it again. So that was Friday night. So what we did is on Saturday morning, suspecting that there was something wrong with the tank, we basically did this. We took it apart on the trailer and everything else, and got to the point where we pulled the tank out and everything else and pulled the pump. And this is the pump that's in the tank. If you look, it's pretty long because the tank is pretty long. So what you're seeing the two pickups that sit in the bottom of the tank. That's the one on the left is the one at the very end. The rear, that one's in the middle. And what happened was when we pulled the pump out, it was essentially like this. So basically, here's the fuel pump. That's the float, the sending unit, and basically that's what screws onto the external part of the tank. And so what happened was we saw the pump was like this, and we said, oh, that's what the issue was, because this basically is supposed to clip onto the bottom of the pump. So we said, oh, that's what it is. It must be sucking air, blah, 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 blah. We put it back together as best we could. We kind of tied it together with some stainless steel wire just to see if we can salvage the weekend. So what happened was when we put the hose back on the back of the pump, the condition got worse. And the reason it got worse is, and it's going to be very hard to see on this, but if you look, on that pump, there's basically a screen, and what it does is it basically blocks anything from going into the pump. So what happened was when we put the pipe, well, the fitting back on the pump, it got worse, and the reason it got worse is because the filter on the back of that pump is clogged. So before, it was just sitting in the tank, drawing as much gas as it can. So the thing is, it was sitting in a 5-inch pipe, right? Drawing as much fuel as it can. So what happened was when we put the fitting back onto the tank, what was initially a restriction issue at that point made it even worse. So instead of sitting in a 5-inch pipe, having as much gas as it could, now it's basically trying to suck gas through a straw, and that's why it would stop. It wouldn't even move when we got to this point, because now it wouldn't even move at all, because now the restriction was even worse, where the ECU just put it in complete limp mode, and then it wouldn't do anything. So what I have to do is I got to figure out how to get that screen off of the pump. I think it's just held on by one screw and it should come right out. But this is what the fuel pump assembly looks like. It sits in the tank. Another common issue with these lines is because of the ethanol and the fuel and everything else, these lines over time will get hard and they'll crack. And what will happen is the pump will actually the pump will actually start sucking air when it's under half a tank. And if you ever wondered why sometimes I have issues when the sled will run poorly when it's half a tank, more than likely one of these lines in the tank is cracked, and it's basically the pump is sucking air. So the only thing you can do to remedy it is basically pull the pump out, the whole assembly out, and replace all the lines and everything else. As I'm going through all these lines actually are still pretty soft. They're actually still pretty flexible. None of them are very hard. So I was gonna originally replace the lines, but you know what? They're actually in pretty good shape. I think the previous owner did it before me. They're a little bit chalky, but they're still flexible. I don't feel any hard spots or any impending signs of failure. All these pre-filters look good. I don't see any clogs on that. I do see something right in there, so I may probably pull that apart and see if we can clean it. So, but essentially, that's what the root issue is. Why we have poor performance, check engine light, and no boost, because essentially it's all fuel related, and it's a restriction in the fuel system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this thing apart and see if I can clean the filter, and go from there, and that should take care of it. So stay tuned. We'll show the next part. All right. So basically, this is that screen that sits inside the filter, inside the pump. And if you look, it's going to be very hard to pick this up on camera, but that's what's clogged. And all you have to do to get it out is just take a little pick, and essentially it pulls right out of the pump. It just slides right out. The hardest thing is, not losing the thing when it comes out, and not deforming it when it comes out, because it's basically it's a little piece of screen. So but it is pretty clogged. There's a lot of crap in it, so it should be just a matter of cleaning it out. I'm probably just gonna blow it out with some compressed air and go from there, and that should get the majority of this stuff out. So okay, so I figured I'd show you what I did to kind of eliminate the hose coming out from the bottom of the pump again. So what I did is I took a hose clamp, because even when I put it on there, it looks like it's basically was on a friction fit, but it's still kind of loose. If I tried hard enough, I could easily pull it right off. So what I did is I basically took a hose clamp, and I put it around the base, lined up the notches, and put it down there and tightened it up, but not so tight where I felt like it was going to crack that nub on the fuel pump. And then what I did is, just to make it a little bit more secure, I took some zip ties and kind of triangulated the pressures holding it down. And all I did was put a couple zip ties around the ring, and essentially I'm using that hose clamp as kind of like an anchor point. So I have a zip tie going around here, then I have another zip tie going around here, and then there's one on the front, which is basically right there, and they're all going through the existing clamps. Now they're not, before anybody starts freaking out, oh, it's too tight. They're just snug, and it's just there so that the end can't work its way off the pump again. So they're not on there with that much force. They're just snug, and right now that the end of that is not going to come off unless there's the thing's dropped off a 20-foot cliff. It's on there pretty good. So essentially, that should resolve it. What I did was to clean the screen on the filter, I just soaked it down with some WD-40 and gave it a couple quick blasts of air, and it cleaned right up. I can see right through it. Before, when I was holding it up to the light, I couldn't even see through it. That's how bad it was. So that should definitely take care of it. The only thing I have left to do is I have to get the gasket from Polaris for the flange that goes against the tank, because obviously this one's rotted. There's no way that thing's going back in there. It would just be a leak and cause a fire. It's just a recipe for a disaster. So essentially, that's That's what I came up for the fix of a fuel pump. Because to replace this whole assembly, I think from Polaris it's like $350 to $400. The last time I looked, Polaris parts are just insane. Just for example, that filter on, not the filter, but the gasket that's on that flange, that filter is $37 from Polaris, and the fuel filter that sits on top of the oil box, that's $28. So, you know, I think Polaris is making enough money off of all of us to keep these sleds running. You know, $37 for a gasket, which honestly probably takes us about 5 cents to make it, is insane. So basically that's it. So what I'll do is I'm going to wait for the parts to come in. I'm going to reassemble it and go from there. I may clean up a couple things, but you know, other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape. So stay tuned. Thanks.